Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. I was hired to oversee a human experiment in a fake town. Would you rather kill someone with a spoon or a butter knife? That was only one in the series of weird questions. It felt as though Dr. McDonough was assessing not my answers, but my reaction to questions. I didn't like his smile. It was too wide, too rehearsed, like he'd done this so many times it had become a reflex. But behind the membrane of that pearly grin was something entirely different, something unidentifiable, a personality that, in my experience, was hidden for a reason. I didn't really care. I was there because of the job offer and nothing else. Exactly how are these questions relevant to my position in the experiment? I asked. They're just here to help us get to know each other. The doc beamed again. He must have noticed my bemuse, because he added, right, so I assume you want to know more about the job itself. I nodded. The company has built a small test town in an undisclosed location in Oregon. They named it Ashfield. Sounds welcoming. With your expertise, you'd be head of security. Your job would be to police the town, to make sure everything goes according to plan. That means patrolling, doing head count, detaining people if they prove troublesome, stopping them from leaving without proper dismissal documents, that kind of thing. I don't have a required expertise for that. I'm not a cop. You don't have to be. Think of it as a prestigious security gig. Of course. Companies sure love to rename their job positions into something they thought sounded cool in order to compensate for a lack of pay and an overabundance of responsibilities. Except, this company didn't regurgitate the typical, we're all family here bullshit. This was a real deal. Even if I wasn't drowning in debt and blacklisted by most security companies, I'd consider the offer. How long's the experiment going to be? I asked. 100 days from the moment of arrival to Ashfield. What's the purpose of this whole thing? That information will not be available to you or the test subjects. Throughout the experiment, you'll be strictly on a need-to-know basis. When you're inside Ashfield, there are no questions. When you're given an order, you execute it without question. I know it sounds harsh, but we can't risk any information getting leaked. Right. I understood clandestine experiments harbored a lack of transparency to safeguard crucial information, but something about this whole thing bothered me. Perhaps it was the way it felt rushed. Perhaps it was that fucking smile. I need to think it over. If it's all the same to you, how soon can you let us know? The doctor's voice was taut, like he was on the verge of obtaining something out of reach. I don't know. A few days. Okay, just one thing. I'm not supposed to say this, but we have candidates lined up to fill your position. Ex-military, Secret Service. It's a fierce competition. Someone like you can't compete. That's what that sentence said if you stripped it of its coding. But more than that, it betrayed the urgency in his voice. They needed someone for this position bad. My guess was he was bluffing. So, why not just go with them? I asked because we did some digging into your past, and we believe, from a psychological standpoint, you'd be the perfect fit for this position. You're assertive, but you also have empathy. When people are cooped up in a small place for 100 days with no outside contact whatsoever, they don't need a brute to keep reminding them what they signed up for. They need someone strong, but human, they can look up to. Chris, they need someone they can trust. His usage of my first name felt like a violation, like a cheap attempt to make the communication less formal. But I also know flattery is pointless with you. That's why the company is willing to throw in a little bonus. McDonough pulled out a drawer and tossed a paper in front of me. I glanced at the staggering numbers. Christ, it's not a matter of whether someone is for sale, but what their price tag says, and mine was well below the 5 digits indicated in the document. Finish the experiment. and you won't have to work for a long time. The doctor flashed his PR smile. My transport was arranged by the company. 3 separate flights, a bus and a van ride later. I was in Ashfield. Dr. McDonough had said the company had built the town just recently, so I had expected dirt roads, prop houses, and mannequins on porches mimicking the population. It seemed that I vastly underestimated the company's resources, because this place felt as real as any other town in America. The only thing that gave away its artificial existence was the tall walls surrounding the town. But even that was easy to overlook thanks to the tree-riddled hills stretching in every direction. I could see people bringing boxes into homes, or writing something down on notepads, or explaining things to who I assumed were test subjects. The van driver took me to the security station and told me to talk to whoever was inside. Whatever camaraderie we might have shared during the 4-hour-long drive here was gone the moment I stepped outside and the tires peeled off the road. Inside the building, I was greeted by a guy in a security uniform. He looked up from the paperwork he was handling. Chris Chambers? Yeah, Travis Baker. Welcome to your new home, sir. He had the no bullshit face of a Rottweiler. Those kind of guys were the best to work with in security during high stakes. During the boring hours, not so much. Then again, I was one of those guys. No life outside the job. Looks like we're gonna have our hands full for a while. Any idea what we're supposed to do? I asked. There's some paperwork to read in the security office. It'll tell you everything you need to know. Baker's radio crackled with a voice that told him he was needed somewhere. So he excused himself right after saying he looked forward to working with me. I dropped my duffel bag on the floor and headed to the security office. I sat at the desk and looked up at the monitors displaying live cams from all over Ashfield. People milled here and there, settling into their new homes. An occasional car drove down the street. Although everyone was dressed in civilian outfits, the authoritative body language contrasting the timid, confused nods and shrugs made it easy to tell which ones were the company personnel and which the test subjects. I began reading the stack of papers in front of me. Welcome to Ashfield, population 46. There was a lot of lengthy talk about the company, how they decided to build it, why here, how long it took, that kind of thing. I skipped to the page that said, security rules, top priority. 1. Curfew is at 10 p.m. Anyone who is out after that time is to be escorted home. You may fine or detain repeated offenders at your own discretion. 2. Head count of all test subjects must be conducted every morning at 7 a.m. and evening at 7 p.m. 3. All test subjects must be present for clinical trials at Ashfield's medical facility. Address on page 23, no exception. Those who do not show up for the trials are in breach of their contract and must be detained immediately. 4. Report any strange occurrences by calling the number on the landline. Strange occurrences? That was broad. Everything in a town like Ashfield was strange. I figured I'd have to clarify that one later with the ones in charge. 5. Remember their faces. I frowned. Whose faces? The test subjects? And if so, why? Whatever. I reminded myself I didn't understand what the purpose of the experiment was, and I was getting paid too much to start asking questions. 6. The test subjects have signed an agreement to stay at Ashfield for 100 days. Since they will be undergoing medication, we do not fully understand yet. Exposure to the outside world is prohibited. Bear in mind that some test subjects are company moles, and their job is to test the security personnel. They may try to make compelling excuses for you to let them go. You will not know whether the person asking to leave is a test subject or a mole. Please bear in mind that the things happening in Ashfield may often seem like unlawful or a violation of human rights. Rest assured it is all a part of the experiment that the test subjects have agreed to. Should you have any concerns, do not hesitate to call the number on the landline. When I looked up, I noted one such violation immediately. My attention was caught by a woman in the shower. Christ, they had cameras even in bathrooms. A huge breach of privacy. One I wasn't sure how the company managed to evade, but I told myself many weird things were going to be happening in Ashfield. When I finished perusing the papers, I was officially ready to start working at the town. On the first day, I met the townsfolk of the experiment. For the duration of their stay, All the participants were given fake jobs to maintain a sense of normalcy, aside from the typical 9 to 5, which was 12 to 4 over here, or however long the participant was willing to indulge in fantasy. The test subjects would go grocery shopping, to the restaurant, the doctor, mechanic, etc. It was as I had said, everything about Ashfield seemed normal on the most superficial level. Remove the towering walls and the gate, and you could easily fool passers-by who stopped for gas. But the fakeness of the town was just one squint away, constantly looming in your periphery, reminding you Ashfield was just a stage full of actors. The people sure seemed to enjoy this play-pretend experiment. They easily got into their roles of soccer moms and suburban dads and town recluses and average Joes and friendly neighbors. But just like the town, one good look left you wondering what lay behind that mask. As for me, I didn't try to pretend. Unlike them, I had a real job. The overseers of the experiment depended on me to keep the town clean, and I intended to do that. Unfortunately, the easy money would turn out to be not so easy, because on the 5th morning, the strange things at Ashfield started to happen. Baker and I were doing the morning head count of the townsfolk. This was always conducted in front of the medical facility. The people had been particularly lethargic that day. Hardly any chatter among them. "Chief, something's wrong," Baker said when he returned from counting. "What is it?" "There's 41 people." I stared at him. "Then count again." I did, 3 times. "It's 41. When you're in this line of work, you learn to trust your partner. They give you information. You take it as the truth. The lack of micromanagement was crucial in time-sensitive situations. I didn't know Baker, though he looked like he was serious about his duties. But for all I knew, he was a nephew of a high-ranking doctor in the experiment who pulled some strings. "Head back to the station. I'll do the head count," I said. When I finished the count, I had 41 people. That couldn't be right. The population of Ashfield was 40 if you didn't count the 6 security personnel. It had been 40 twice a day, every day since my arrival. I counted again, scrutinizing every face in the crowd. Remember their faces. Could it be that one of my team members ended up in the flock in confusion? 41 again. By then, the groans and the hopping from foot to foot and the yawns were becoming more and more apparent. I radioed Baker and told him to call HQ from the landline. A few minutes later, he radioed me back saying the higher-ups said it was okay to let the people start with clinical trials. I asked him what they had to say to the surplus, and he said they just told him, "Thank you for reporting this." Although I was clearly baffled by the situation, orders were orders. I let the people head inside. I went back to the security station and went through the roster of test subjects. 41 people. On the first page of the rule book, it said, "Welcome to Ashfield, population 47. I wish things stopped there, because I could then chalk them up to my own insanity. But as these things always go, this was just the beginning of a nightmare. Story 2. I visited my aunt last year. Here is my crazy experience. I just want to share my experience. Last year, I visited my aunt in a rural area of the Philippines. It had been nearly a decade since we last saw each other. I've been working in Australia as a nurse. She's been unwell lately. So I decided that years-long vacation, I'd spend it in her home in a small fishing village. The village is located on the outskirts of a large town and is modest in many ways. At its center sits an old, spacious Catholic church, a working rural health center, and a community gymnasium, all clustered together. Although officially classified as a village, many of the residents are well off, often families of overseas workers or those holding high-ranking positions in the municipal hall. My widowed aunt lived with her pregnant niece, Danica. She is a retired school principal and had taken Danica in as family because she and her late husband were childless. Despite her modest lifestyle, my aunt had built a comfortable life, a well-maintained 2-story house, a car, and a hardware store in the nearby town. As for Danica, she had left her teaching job to become a full-time mother after her husband secured work overseas last year. When I visited, she was in her 3rd trimester with twins. My story begins one Sunday after Mass. On our way home from the service, we notice an old woman, clearly homeless. She was barefoot, dressed in a greasy, tattered floral gown layered over dirty denim jeans. Her unkempt, long, thick gray hair hung in tangled clumps over her face, barely revealing her sunken cheeks and cracked lips. I don't mean to sound classist, but I was genuinely shocked to see her in this neighborhood. It wasn't just me. Other churchgoers looked perplexed as well. We watched as she pressed her face against the windshields of parked cars, audibly sniffing. After each attempt, she leaned back. Her upper body swayed unsteadily while her stiff legs remained planted on the ground. Then she moved on, her thin frame hunched, arms swinging loosely by her sides, and head tilted upward as she sniffed loudly. She would stop now and then, pressing her face against a windshield or even a motorbike seat. I couldn't quite tell what she was searching for, but it seemed her nose was her compass. As soon as my Aunt Danica and I were just a few meters away, the woman snapped her neck and turned to face us. It sent a chill down my spine. "I recognize her," my aunt murmured. "She caused a disturbance in town yesterday. She was seen jumping over fences, clawing at doors and windows. She even threw rocks at a few houses." Without another word, she seized both my arm and Danica's arm. We hurried home, anxious about what the woman might do, especially with Danica so far along in her pregnancy. As soon as we reached the house, we locked the gate, bolted the doors and windows, and stayed inside the rest of the day. Now here's the insane part. That night, after dinner, I was washing the dishes when I saw a small black rat dart from beneath the sofa to the back of the refrigerator. Being a clean freak, I was instantly disturbed. The thought of that tiny creature roaming freely through the house, possibly crawling over utensils, fruit, or other surfaces, made my skin crawl. Armed with a broom, I pulled the large appliance away from the wall, scanning the shadows closely for any sign of movement. But the rat wasn't there. I checked under the furniture, thinking it might have slipped past my watchful eye. Still nothing. I even searched the corners of the room, but there was no trace of it. That's when it occurred to me. All the windows and doors were locked. There was no obvious way for the animal to have entered the first floor in the first place. The next morning, I headed to the city to process some documents and visit an old friend. When I returned to my aunt's house, I saw her, the same old woman, sitting cross-legged on the concrete by the gate. Her head twitched visibly. Honestly, I hesitated. I considered calling the police, but anxiety tugged at me. Inside were only a retiree and a pregnant woman. I stepped forward and grabbed the gate handle. That's when I heard a loud snap. She jerked her neck and stared directly at me. I nearly crapped my pants. I flung the gate open and sprinted toward the house. Just as I reached the door, Danica opened it. Her eyes widened at the sight of me, sweating breathless, wild-eyed. Concerned, she asked what happened. I turned to explain, but she was gone. The gate was made of horizontal slats. Even from a distance, you could still see through. That evening, after dinner, the mouse returned. This time, I was ready. I blocked its usual path to the refrigerator, forcing it to detour toward the sofa. I flipped the cushion, broom in hand, ready to strike. But I froze. Its left ear and right foreleg were grotesquely oversized and disproportionate to its small body. I stood there, stunned, as it darted once more behind the refrigerator. Simultaneously, my aunt came hurrying down the stairs, alarmed by the commotion. I explained what happened, describing the rat's bizarre features. As soon as I mentioned its distorted ear and limb, her expression changed. She turned frightened and visibly shaken. "Are you sure you saw that?" she asked, voice trembling. Is that thing still behind the refrigerator?" I nodded, and just then, a deep, creeping thought settled in. Something wasn't right. Without hesitation, she rushed to the family altar, grabbed 2 rosaries, and thrust one into my hand. Then she shouted for Danica to lock every door and window, and to keep hold of her rosary, and no one was to enter the bedroom until sunrise. "Why are you here?" my aunt cried, staring toward the refrigerator. "What do you want?" She repeated the question 3 times, and then, I swear I'm not making this up, I heard a voice. Because I want to eat the baby. It was a calm man's voice, speaking from behind the refrigerator. A chill crawled up my spine. I instinctively backed away until I hit the wall. My aunt cried out, clutching her rosary tightly. "I won't let you harm my grandchild," she screamed, voice cracking as she began chanting prayers. Suddenly, I heard scratching, glass scraping against something. I turned to my right toward the wide, sliding window and instantly wished I hadn't. There she was, visible under the bright outdoor ceiling light. The old woman pressed her face to glass, mouth stretched unnaturally wide as she gnawed at it, exposing triangle-shaped teeth dripping with black goo. I was distracted by my aunt's sudden scream. When I turned to see what she was pointing at, oh boy, I kid you not, it was a hand, jet black, thick hair like that of a monkey, and tipped with long, pointed nails, slowly stretching out from behind the refrigerator. Then came the shoulder, just as hairy and what looked like a pointed ear, maybe a horn. I couldn't tell if it was bone or just a twisted tuft of fur. The putrid and sour stench hit me hard. I almost vomited, and then I saw its left glowing red eye, human-like in shape, but slit like a snake's pupil. Its mouth twisted into an unnatural grin. Teeth stained red and jagged, stretched far too wide across its face. My knees got jelly, and I dropped hard on the wood tile floor. For that moment, I wished I was dreaming just a bad nightmare. The haunting itself was unreal. I looked up and saw my crying aunt. Her knees were shaking, but for protecting Danica, and her child fueled her bravery. But the dread and hopelessness were ominous. That was when a thought came to my mind, a gamble, a very risky gamble. The entrance door was less than a meter away from my left. So I sprinted to the door, unlocked the door and the bolt and swung open, and shouted from the top of my lungs for help. That's when I heard the sound, fast, pounding steps. I turned and saw the old woman charging toward me on all fours, mouth stretched grotesquely wide in a twisted smile, tongue dangling unnaturally long, and nearly dragging on the ground. I froze. I honestly just stood and gave up. I mean, what could I do in that situation? I welcomed death, but she didn't stop. She shot past me like a blast of wind. I spun around, and the lights immediately went out. A shriek tore through the darkness, followed by loud crunching and the violent smashing of furniture. I fumbled forward, tracing the wall with one hand until I found my aunt. Her arm trembled in mine. I imagined that her mouth was clenched shut in terror. "What's happening?" she whispered. Her voice barely held together. I didn't have an answer. The chaos lasted for what felt like forever. The cacophony of shouts, crunching, breaking was deafening. It became louder each second, until suddenly the lights flickered back on, and there she stood, the old woman, blood-soaked, her abdomen disproportionately bloated, her mouth stretched in an impossible smile from ear to ear. There was blood everywhere. Danica came downstairs and called out to us, but froze the moment she saw the old woman, or whatever that thing was. She gasped and stood motionless. The old woman turned toward us. Instinctively, I stepped in front of both women, ready to protect them. For a moment, her face was glued upon us before facing the door and stepped toward it, hunched, arms swinging loosely by her sides, and head tilted upward as she sniffed loudly. I watched her walk out the property and vanished under the cloak of the night. As soon as she was gone, neighbors came running to check on us. All they heard was my shouting, neither the screaming of a man's voice, the loud crunching and violent crushing, nor saw the old woman. They were shocked to see the mess inside. I ended up staying another month, waiting until Danica safely gave birth. Her husband arrived soon after, and knowing someone would now be with them, I returned to Australia. I've heard plenty of stories about cryptids in my homeland, but never about one that hunts other dangerous cryptids. And as much as that old woman terrified me, I won't lie, part of me felt a twisted relief. I still picture her out there, somewhere, roaming a shadowy road, walking alone in an abandoned cursed town, or drifting through a haunted forest. That bent frame, those swaying arms, the upturned head and audible sniffing, ready to pounce the vengeful and twisted. Badass, isn't she? Story 3. I get paid to write suicide notes. Closure is a funny thing. It's something I've searched for in therapy, drugs, liquor, rehab. I've ridden every merry-go-round and spun every roundabout. I don't think closure is something you can work towards, nor something given with grace. I don't think there's a rhyme or reason. I think some people just get it, and others just don't. I'm a part of the latter. When I was 12, I found my father in pieces. Literal pieces. The shotgun blast had blown a crater in his face, spreading his eyes apart and decimating his nose. My mouth was agape, and I could feel the sharp air escaping my throat, yet I couldn't hear myself scream. Everything went silent, as if I was special enough for the world to stop turning, for every noise to shush and mourn. 15 years later, I still haven't found a vice that erases the sight of his face, like a scarlet cave. And the cherry on top, never knowing why. I always heard people say they never saw the signs, and I'd foolishly wonder, how? You know when someone's physically hurt. How can't you tell mentally? Yet my father, who golfed with his old college buddies on weekends and had just received a horse-choking Christmas bonus, had felt worthless enough to swallow the barrel of a 12-gauge. But what puzzled me more was how he could leave me without at least telling me why. I wondered if it'd even satisfy me, but at least I'd be able to draw a conclusion. All I was left with were broken pieces that don't fit back together. After nearly graduating with a master's in journalism, I showed up to graduation, so drunk I needed my stomach pumped thereafter. Friends, who soon became strangers, told me I'd piss myself on stage before puking on humanitarian charity founder who was receiving an honorary doctorate. My diploma was revoked, and I was barred from ever returning to campus premises, and that only sent me spiraling further into my addictions. With nothing but empty, sticky bottles and unused writing skills, I wasted days drowning in my sorrows, my father's face behind my eyelids with every blink. He was in every dream, every memory, every thought. I'm addicted because Dad killed himself. I lost my degree because Dad killed himself. I have no friends because Dad killed himself. I was stuck in a cycle of self-pity that nobody else around me cared to indulge in. I didn't blame them. Why would they? After flipping burgers at McDonald's for 2 years, I was fired after getting caught buying LSD behind a building while on my break. With no college degree, and used writing skills and expensive habits, I took to a different kind of freelance writing. Are you seeking closure? Didn't get the truth from a special someone gone too soon? Email me at redacted.com and have the final goodbye you've always needed. If I couldn't help myself, I thought maybe I could help other people while making a quick buck in the process. Business started slow, the inbox receiving mostly spam and trolls lacing their emails with viruses. But soon enough, real commissions began to come in. My son, Brandon, hung himself in his bedroom closet. He was 17, and the star pitcher on his high school's baseball team. They found pills in his system too, but I guess we didn't have enough. He loved bad action movies that I always sat through anyway, and skateboarding with his cousins. Can you please just tell me it's not my fault? Can he tell me that? Initially, it felt invasive. The degree I didn't get wasn't in psychology. I was aiming to be a film journalist. Could I actually help these people? Or was this just another one of my ways of sucking blood? Most of all, was this something that would have helped me? I blew the $50 I received for Brandon's note on liquor. Then I drank it all and cried, smashed a glass, cut my hand cleaning up the shards and cried harder. It felt impossible to escape the labyrinth of hating myself, yet constantly needing to tell myself I was a good person to stay above water. A few days later, another request appeared in my inbox. She delayed the M train for 4 hours while they scrubbed her off. A whole person, their dreams and mistakes, turned to paste. I fucking hate her, and I miss her so much. Can you just tell me you forgive me for what I said? You don't need to know what it was. She walked out on me for it, and delayed the M train for 4 hours, and I think that's punishment enough. Another $50. I bought heroin for the first time and blacked out for 3 days. I'd periodically wake up in the bathroom, my fingertips scraped to ribbons from scratching the grout between the tiles. It was terrifying how euphoric I felt. I'd never been so scared yet so elated in my life. I wonder if my dad had ever tried the same to cope with whatever he was wrestling with. Ever since his suicide, It was hard to look back at him clearly. I knew my memories with him were real, yet they didn't feel true. Did I ever actually know this person? Or did I know all that I needed to? When my email dinged again, I crawled across the wooden floor before climbing onto my desk chair. With a floppy smack to the keyboard, the screen gleamed to life. I'm a coward. That's all you need to know about me. I'd like to say I tried my best, but I don't think that's true. My entire life up to this moment has felt like a failed test run, a botched product waiting for recall. Every day I walk around wondering if it's my last. Everything in my vision is just something to bash my head against or leap in front of. It feels like there's rust under my skin, and I'm homesick in bed. There's no finite remedy. I don't have anything to say, nothing that'd make it any easier for my family. Sent extra for it to be expedited. Thanks. My eyes bulge at the $150 commission. When you're an addict, you want money in a way that spans beyond greed. It's starvation, the air that pumps your lungs. When I didn't have it, my chest burned, and when it was within my grasp, I salivated. The only thing better was what it could get you. But as I read over the commission again, my gut churned with unease. I didn't have much info about this person other than their email. But could I have reported this to the police? Was I about to write a letter that didn't have to be written? My shaking hands hovered over my keyboard as I wondered if I should email him something else. Sobbing about how my father's suicide ruined my life, or telling him how much better it gets. I always pondered if my dad did it, 'cause he didn't think it would get any better, or if he couldn't handle it getting any worse before it did. Running on a descending timer, but all you know is its tick. Some days, sinking into the shape I'd accumulated in my mattress, I'd felt like I understood him more than I ever had. But I didn't want to die. I just wanted it to stop, which made me realize I always understood him more than I thought. The pointed finger on my screen sat above the accept button on the PayPal offer as I stared without a blink. I could do a lot with $150. Besides, you couldn't help Dad. What makes you think you could help a stranger? After a dry swallow, I clicked to accept the payment, both my soul and my wallet gaining weight. Once I sent the email, I threw up in the bathroom before choking down 3 vodka shots and puking again. I didn't care what I did to my body or what it took to make it hurt. Anything felt better than the pain in my head. Initially, it felt like I was spending blood money. But without a doubt, I soon withdrew the cash and blew it all on an assortment of liquor, clear in one hand and brown in the other. I took swigs from both while I watched brainless TV, dabbing the spilled whiskey off the side of my mouth with the crumpled eviction warning I'd found on my apartment door that morning. Thump thump, under the volume of the trashy reality show, I suddenly overheard a banging noise, slow and hearty. Probably just construction that'll never get done. Our tax dollars, hard at work. I raised the volume and freed 2 fingers to pinch a potato chip from a nearby bag before eviscerating my mouth and washing it down with tequila. Thump, thump, thump. The noise quickly returned louder and more aggressive, its efforts vibrating across the floorboards and through the legs of my bed frame. My head swirling with intoxication, I paused the show, filling the room with silence. For a moment, nothing. Thump, thump. I swiveled toward my closet door, which was practically bouncing off its hinges as something pounded against the inside of it. Blinking like a frog, I rested the bottles on my nightstand and stumbled to my feet before drunkenly lumbering toward the white, chipped door. Hunched in front of it, my eyes scanned it up and down. Am I asleep? My body winced from head to toe as it banged right in front of me. HLO? Look, if you're a squatter or something, I don't want any problems, okay? The place won't even be mine soon, anyway. After I finished speaking, silence. Hello? I hesitantly reached for the doorknob. As my trembling fingers neared the cold metal, my eyes widened as it suddenly began turning on its own, screeching as it slowly spun. Before I knew it, the door swung open, its edge smashing against my forehead and knocking me on my ass. I could feel warm blood trickling down my temple as a throbbing sensation clenched my skull. Once my eyes unclenched, they stared, bulged and baffled at the blurry sight of a body hanging from a noose in my closet. The rope creaked as it gently swayed, something gurgling in their crushed throat. With rapid blinks, I attempted to erase what I assumed was a hallucination, but each time my eyes opened again, it was still there, swinging like a wind chime. In the dark, it was hard to fully make out its appearance, but they seemed smaller than the average adult. Some kind of logo on his buttoned-up tee. Then, as if tugged with a hook offstage, the body yanked backward and vanished between the rows of clothes. What the actual fuck? As I raised a hand toward the gash on my forehead, something coarse began slithering around my throat. Before I could look down, it cinched my neck, squeezing a wheezy choke out of me. My hands pawed at what felt like rope, which tightened farther while slowly lifting me off the ground. I desperately attempted to rip it off, but its grip was too tight to slip a finger through. Frantically kicking my feet that would soon be off the ground, I noticed the liquor bottles in the corner of my eye. Then I raised my leg and used my foot to pull one of them over the edge before shattering it into jagged chunks. Nearly spraining a muscle, I stretched to grab a piece of glass, just barely snatching one before clutching it till my palm bled as I sawed at the rope. Blood pooled in my aching head as my lungs sizzled with desperation, the dense rope hanging by a thread. As my toes severed from the ground, so did the rope, a hissing breath sucking into my expanding throat. As I dropped to the floor, I released a shard of glass before gently probing my neck, my eyes darting around for the rope and whoever was holding it, but neither were anywhere to be seen. Hunched over my bathroom sink, I bandaged my forehead and scrubbed off the blood I'd smeared on my throat, revealing the dark purple ring the noose had left. Staring at the bruise, I swallowed roughly and winced. That was real. I know it was. I'm not fucking crazy. Wounds aside, my eyes were bloodshot with their own purple halos underneath. They looked like two snuffed-out candles in my sockets. I tried to remember if Dad looked like that toward the end, but in my mind, it was hard to see his face intact, and once I pictured it, it wasn't easy to stop. Stumbling out of the bathroom, I grabbed my phone and texted my plug, who said he was with a chillin' friend, and I'd need to come his way if I wanted a cop. I had never found myself in stranger places than when I became desperate for money. My not-so-proudest moment was when I was high on my mind in Vegas, twirling in circles on the Strip, when I witnessed a woman cry with distress after the engagement ring she'd received minutes prior had tumbled directly through the splits of a sewer grate. After helping the naive, fresh-faced couple retrieve the ring, I abruptly ran off with it in my clutches, the woman's fiancé chasing me for a few feet before she yelled for him to just let it go. For some reason, that time in particular looped in my mind as I waited on the subway platform, my arms crossed tightly against my chest as I stood under a singular flickering yellow light. Metal screeches echoed and leaky pipes ached. A man sat across the platform, slumped and masked by a brown raincoat. I couldn't tell if he was asleep or if his chest was even lifting. My stomach churned with unease as it felt like a blowtorch was raised against my nerve endings. I was sobering up and desperate for otherwise. An incoming train soon roared across the opposite tracks, and through the passing windows, the man was standing and staring back. I struggled to see what was under his hood, a sliver of his face appearing as a deep red blur, chunks dripping from it onto his chest. When the train entered the tunnel, he was slouched again, as if he hadn't budged at all. I clenched my eyes and rubbed them before touching my sore neck, using the pain to ground myself in reality. Jesus, maybe I am losing it. Near silence filled the subway again, no other pedestrians joining other than I and the man in the raincoat. My chest tightening with anxiety, I opened my phone and searched for the scheduled train times online. Suddenly, through my peripheral, I spotted movement. I looked away from my screen and noticed a man was now sitting upward, hunched over the edge of the bench. You're on public transportation. He's just some guy. Mind your business. Returning my attention to my phone, I searched for my train line before catching another movement, my paranoia getting the best of me. I glanced at the man, who now had his arms extended outward, his wrists bent to face his palms toward me. My brows furrowed with confusion as I chuckled weakly to myself. God, this stop always attracts the weirdest of weirdos. Then the man craned his hands back and viciously pushed against the air before I suddenly felt the pressure of a pair of hands against my back. The unexpected force shoved me onto the tracks, my phone shattering to a black mirror as it smashed beside me, aches blooming across my rib cage. I writhe against the gravel, squealing with each throb, rolling onto my back, my vision faded in and out, the scarlet-faced man in the leather raincoat appearing and disappearing each time. Help! I instinctively shouted, but there was no one around to do so. Then, every pebble beneath me began to shake and hop like Mexican jumping beans before the headlights of the oncoming train illuminated the tunnel. Attempting to lift myself while avoiding electrocution, the train's barreling wheels screeched against the metal tracks. After reaching the foot of the platform, I hopped and just barely caught its edge, my torso throbbing. Somebody, please. As the blinding headlights entered the corner of my vision, I desperately attempted to lift myself onto the platform, my fingertips turning white from pressure. The tip of a black boot appeared before digging its heel onto my hand. I yelped as my grip involuntarily released, sending me into a free fall onto the tracks. The train mere feet from me. It was as if time had slowed, the inches to the ground feeling like miles. At the foot of the platform stood the man, the tips of his shoes dangling over the edge. Then, the yellow light swallowed my vision, and the metal grating stuffed my ears. Please, I don't want to die. Please. I clenched my eyes shut as my limbs flailed, my ankle knocking into something and prompting another bang throughout the floor. After a few seconds, all that was left were my own shaking breaths rattling in my ears. Wah, what the fuck is happening? Trembling in a ball, I cautiously opened my eyes. I was on my bedroom floor, my surroundings wrecked from my panic, rapidly blinking in disbelief. My eyes darted around the moonlit room, crickets singing through my cracked window. My desk was shifted from impact, my laptop resting sideways on the floor with a new commission flashing in my inbox. In the clutches of my hand was my phone, my plug's contact open with an unsent text half-typed in the bar. Is this my room? Like my actual room? I scattered to my feet, my heart thumping in my ears like a machine gun. Is Samibo... What the fuck are you? I shouted aloud. Silence, of course. I plopped onto the edge of my bed and dropped my head into my hands. Jesus Christ, I'm losing my mind. For the rest of the night, I remained curled under my blanket, but unable to sleep till the sun crept through my window. My eyeballs were bloodshot and burning from the lack of moisture. My blinking reduced, as I feared what I'd see once I opened my eyes again. As the birds chirped through the window, I cautiously sat up in bed, surveying the mess I'd made of my room. When I planted my feet on the ground, they dipped right into the sticky residue of the liquor I'd spilled last night. This is a problem for another time. My chest still aching, I waddled to the bathroom and lifted my shirt in front of the mirror. My ribs were splotched with brown and purple, my throat still bruised as well. This is real, right? This pain is real? I feel it, yet it's still so hard to believe. With folded lips, I squeezed the ring on my throat, wincing as the pain throbbed throughout my neck till I could no more. Am I convinced enough? I increased pressure till I started to cry before dropping to the cold tile. Just keeping myself on 2 feet was draining. I felt surrounded by phantoms, but that didn't deter me from my work. Once I remembered money wasn't funneling in from anywhere else, and it was going to be hard to find a place to hire me after my last stunt. Holed up in my apartment, I began promoting myself further, like making social media accounts and offering a mailing list. Practically glued to my computer, the same clothes I'd been wearing clung to my sweaty skin, as I was too scared to re-enter my closet. The bruises on my neck and chest weren't just persisting, but appearing to be getting worse, spreading like a purple fungus. For nearly a week, my hands traveled between 2 places, my keyboard and the neck of a bottle. I was cranking out commissions, collecting cash and hoping to accumulate enough for rent and a liquor cabinet refill. And although the site was initially intended for suicide notes, I started receiving all kinds of requests with financial offers I couldn't afford to turn down. You know when you're driving and you take just 1 second to look at the radio and you nearly rear-end someone? It's the same with kids. I was right on the porch. He was 10 feet away on the lawn. I took my eyes off him to swat away a bee. By the time I heard the tires burn, the chalky van with the scuffed license plate was gone, and so was he. All because I couldn't stand a bee. Hindsight only offers the stupidest things. It's insulting. It's been 3 years now, and I know he's not coming home. I stopped dreaming of that. Just tell me that he's safe, please. That wherever he is peaceful. Anything if it can't be with me. For $300, I told a grieving, directionless mother that her missing son was in Candyland. I felt like a scam artist. I was a scam artist. This wasn't real closure, but if it's close enough to the real thing, how bad could that hurt? Plastic's just as shiny as porcelain, no? I made more justifications than I did drinks. But I was raking in more money than I ever had at the time. 5 to 10 commissions a day would flood in mothers and fathers, friends and lovers, all begging me to provide them what nothing else has brought. It felt horrible to admit, but there was a strange power to it. After what happened in my closet and at the train station, I was petrified yet oddly validated. It felt like my work was connecting with something deeper than I could have imagined and something closer to reality than I could have fathomed. While in the middle of writing for a client, I heard a soft knock on my front door. Rubbing my dry eyes, I dragged my socks against the floorboards as I approached the door. Before making my presence known, I leaned into the peephole. Initially, it appeared that nobody was there, but when I looked down, I noticed a young, raven-haired boy standing with his back turned. His hand was lifted to his mouth. Crunches echoing down the hall as he gnawed on something. Is this some kind of prank? Hi, can I help you? I asked through the door. He stiffly retracted his hand from his mouth. I got lost. Is this the right street? His voice was frail, almost monotonous. Where are you trying to go, bud? He paused before raising his hand to his mouth again and taking another chomp of his secret snack. Home, he responded with a mouthful. Okay, where's home? Do you live in this building? My fingertips inched toward the chain lock. Another pause while he dug in for more. As he pulled something with his teeth, I heard a subtle splash against the ground. I got lost. Is this the right street? This isn't right. I stopped reaching for the lock, balling my fist as I feared stepping away from the door. Look, I'm sorry, kid, but I don't think I can help you. There's a security office in the lobby. His chewing paused as the words left my mouth, a knot forming in my throat. I watched as the boy slowly turned around to reveal his lazy stare and red-stained lips. My bulging I practically pressed against the glass. My gut churned as he lifted his mangled hand toward his open mouth, which was lined with a row of shattered teeth, with his bloody nubs in his mouth. He used his molars to gnaw at the tender flesh and dense bone, teeth breaking in his mouth and swirling into mix before he gulped it all down. Then he began to tremble from head to toe, as if an earthquake was erupting inside of him, with twitches and snaps. The boy's torso extended itself upward till his height matched the peephole, his milky eye peering back at me. Are you my mama? With a frightened gasp, I jumped backward, my lungs tightening and requiring rapid breaths. Please go away, I shouted. Then the boy started to cry. He released this ugly, drunken cry that sounded like a record scratch. It reminded me too much of myself, my palms clamping my ears. His cries were impossible to ignore. It felt like they were ringing in my head. I can't do this anymore. This isn't worth it. Mama Maya, he wailed with a gurgle. With squinted eyes and plugged ears, I ran to my bedroom before finding my laptop, snatching off my desk and smashing against the floor. Meg, stop, I shrieked as I stomped the computer to pieces, my chest burning with exhaustion. I soon realized the boy's cries had stopped, my eyes darting around the room. I waited to confirm that whatever was happening had stopped. I didn't even know if I had the power to do so. I just knew I couldn't offer my services anymore. The silence both reassuring and worrying, I hesitantly checked the peephole, and with a sigh of relief, the boy was gone. 2 weeks passed. I'd emptied my apartment of bottles and endured the withdrawals before luckily landing a job at a receptionist's desk, which I got after painting my worsening bruises with foundation for the interview. Everything that happened had scared me straight, but not straight enough, as it was hard not to wonder what exactly I had accomplished with those notes. Did I bridge a gap to the afterlife? Was their family seeing things, too? The same things as me? Pertaining to the latter, I sure hope not. But nonetheless, I discovered power in speaking for those who didn't have last words, and whether or not I was playing God or connecting with one. There was one thing I couldn't shake off my mind. Could I use it to talk to Dad? One night, after work, I grabbed a piece of loose leaf and pencil before sitting at my kitchen table, staring at it as if words would appear on their own. Writing about other people came with ease, but this had me paralyzed. I didn't know if I should write what I wanted to hear or what I think he would have said. I struggled to even differentiate the two. Ultimately, I forced the pencil to the paper and trusted it to flow. My golden hour, my Sophia. I wanted to give you all the best parts of me and swallow the worst, but I know you would have loved it all the same. I wish I was strong enough to let you do so. Conquer the world, kiddo. You've never needed me to do it. As my teardrops stained the page, rain suddenly began pelting against my window. My head perked up as I dropped the pencil, swiveling around in search of any sight of him. Dad? I hesitantly called aloud, feeling silly once I did it. Silence. Then I yelped as something bolted through the window, sprinkling shattered glass across the floorboards. Rain leaking through the cracked hole, I inched toward a projectile that rested amongst the shards. A golf ball? My eyes widened. Dad. I rushed to the window, and standing in the wet, desolate street was the red-faced man in the brown coat. Of course. He was always the one ghost I couldn't escape. Sprinting downstairs, I threw the exit doors open, the storm immediately soaking me as I searched for him through the droplets. Dad! Dad! Thunder roared and lightning thrashed in the dark sky as I searched desperately to no avail. In the corners of my eyes, I'd catch a glimpse of his bullet-chewed face, but he'd vanish at the heel turn. Spinning till I was dizzy and nauseous, I collapsed to my knees in the flooded street, my tears mixing into the rain. Dad! I'm here. I'm right here. Clawing at the pavement till my nails ripped. It felt like every memory, every picture of him was burning to ash in my head. Even when he was on the basement sofa, the barrel of the shotgun crammed into the crimson flesh flower that had bloomed. I can't see you, Dad. Please, I can't see you. Story 4. I was the night manager of a haunted arcade. You don't expect to get haunted working at a damn arcade. Sticky soda floors, screaming kids, busted ticket machines. Yeah, but real ghosts? No one trains you for that. I was the manager of the Pit, a local mega arcade that used to be an old strip club owned by some gangsters before they turned it into a flashing, buzzing kid trap. Everyone in town went there. Birthday parties, first dates, sad divorces. Probably it was always busy, loud, and underneath that noise, something else. It started in the laser tag arena. The arena had this swinging black door, no lock, just one of those push-to-open types. But every now and then, it wouldn't open. You'd slam into it, and it felt like someone was holding it shut on the other side, pushing back, and there was no one else in there. I'd be alone. We all joked about it at first. Called it Frank, after the tall shadow figure we'd seen more than once. He'd stand beside you in the laser tag office, watching the loft above the arcade, arms crossed. I'd glance up, and there he'd be, still watching. The second you looked straight at him, gone. The employees started clocking sightings like it was normal. Like, yo, Frank's in the ticket counter again. Cool, let him know we're out at Tootsie Rolls. But it wasn't funny for long. There was also her. We didn't give her a name. She didn't want one. A little girl, long black hair, dirty dress, eyes that didn't shine under fluorescence. She mimicked voices. That's how she got you. Ash, come in here. It would echo out from the laser tag maze, like a co-worker was calling me, like someone needed help. But I was alone. Every time I started bringing gear. Stuff I bought after falling down ghost hunting YouTube rabbit holes. Spirit boxes, those cat ball toys that light up when touched, a cheap EMF detector, even a REM pod. I convinced the night shift crew, Zach and Josh, to help me. We'd wait until the place was slow and empty, and try to talk to whatever was there. The spirit box would sputter, and sometimes a voice would break through. Don't leave, stay, demon. I never told the others what that last one meant. Not really. See, I already had something attached to me. Stupid teenage me, trying to impress my friends in a graveyard. Ouija board, candle circle, some Latin we read off a Tumblr post. Classic Curses starter pack. Ever since then, I'd feel watched in mirrors, hear my name whispered in static, dream about black dogs with too many teeth. So when things got worse, when the hauntings started bleeding into our homes, I knew I was a problem. Zach said his lights would flicker, and he would see shadow people in his house when he was alone, and his pet birds would start talking to things that weren't even there. And me, I'd wake up to the sound of my own voice calling from a hallway. Ash, 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 then silence. Then the sound of something breathing just behind the door. Eventually, corporate let me go. Budget reasons. They said, sure, but I saw the way they looked at me. Like I was bringing something with me. Like they were scared of me now. It's been almost 2 years. I moved. New job. No arcades. No graveyards. But the hauntings never stopped. The shadows still stretch wrong in the corners of my bedroom. The cat balls still light up at 3 a.m., rolling toward my bed. My name still gets whispered by a voice that sounds like mine. And sometimes when I glance in the mirror, it's watching. Story 5. The book said, read this passage to summon a demon. The next line was, don't open the door. I'm writing this because I'd already opened it. I've always been a seeker, not for money or fame or any of the things most people chase. I've been looking for the truth, the real truth, the kind that hides in shadows, written in dead languages on brittle parchment. I'm talking about magic. And no, I don't mean the fantasy crap you see in movies or read in novels. I'm not some kid who thinks waving a stick and saying fake Latin will make sparks fly. I'm talking about the real thing. The deep, dark, and often ugly underbelly of human belief. The mechanics of the unseen world. Witchcraft, Goetia, theurgy, demonology. That's been my life's work, my obsession. My small one-bedroom apartment is less of a home and more of a private library. I've spent every spare dollar I've ever earned from my soul-crushing day job on books. Not just the popular stuff, either. Anyone can get a copy of the Lesser Key of Solomon. I went deeper. I have a fragile, translated copy of Shams Al-Ma'arif. I've pored over the hateful, fearful prose of the Malleus Maleficarum. I've spent months trying to decipher the complex, coded rituals in the book of the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. I know the names, the sigils, the hierarchies. I know which spirits govern which domains, which incantations are meant to bind, and which are meant to loose. I have all this knowledge, a universe of it, crammed into my head and onto my bookshelves. But for all my study, it's always felt academic, theoretical. I've tried things, of course. Small rituals, scrying attempts, simple evocations in the dead of night. And the result was always the same. Nothing, just the silence of my apartment, the smell of burnt herbs, and the bitter taste of my own failure. It was like being a master mechanic who had memorized every schematic for every engine ever built, but had never once managed to actually turn a key and hear an engine roar to life. I had the theory down cold, but I was missing something. The spark, the conduit, the real sauce, as I started calling in my head. I was beginning to think it was all just folklore, intricate, fascinating, but ultimately powerless stories told by people in the dark to scare themselves. I was on the verge of giving up, and then I found the book. It was a total accident, a fluke. I was in a vast, old public library downtown, looking for something completely unrelated in their reference section. I took a wrong turn and ended up in a dusty, forgotten corner of the stacks marked Archaic Philology. It was a dead zone, The books looked like they hadn't been touched in a century, and there, shoved horizontally on top of a row of linguistics textbooks, was a book with no markings on its spine. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it down. It was heavy, bound in a plain, deep maroon leather that was worn smooth and felt strangely warm to the touch. There was no title on the cover, no author, no publisher's mark anywhere. The pages were thick, creamy-colored vellum, and they were filled with handwritten script. The ink was a faded brown, and the handwriting was precise, elegant, but unsettlingly sharp cursive. There was no library card, no stamp, no barcode. It didn't officially exist. I sat down on the floor in that dusty aisle and began to read, and I felt a thrill, a jolt of electricity that I hadn't felt in years. This was different. The language was direct, plain English, but the concepts were astounding. It wasn't filled with the usual cryptic allegories or dogmatic warnings. It read like a practical manual, a textbook for an impossible science. It spoke of reality as a series of overlapping membranes, and of magic as the act of learning how to vibrate at the correct frequency to pass through them or to pull something through from the other side. It was everything I had been searching for. The theory, but also the application. The why and the how. I knew I couldn't just check it out. It wasn't in the system. But I couldn't leave it there, either. This was a discovery of a lifetime. So, I did something I've never done before. I slipped it into my messenger bag, my heart hammering against my ribs, and I walked out of the library. It felt like a transgression, a sacrilege, but I couldn't stop myself. Back in my apartment, I devoured it. For 2 days, I barely ate or slept. The book explained concepts that had always been vague in other texts. It talked about demons not as horned, malevolent entities, but as beings of pure, focused intent from adjacent realities, things that could be drawn to a specific emotional or intellectual frequency, like a moth to a flame. It described rituals not as complex ceremonies with candles and circles, but as simple, focused acts of will and vocalization designed to create a specific resonance. It was late on the third night when I found the passage. It was a simple chapter titled On Reciprocal Observation. The text leading up to it explained that the simplest way to establish a connection with an entity from an adjacent membrane was to make it aware of your existence, to let it see you so that you in turn could see it. It was, the book explained, the most basic and most dangerous form of invitation. Then there was a small, neat paragraph indented from the main text. It read, "The following passage, when read aloud with sincere intent, will create a resonance sufficient to attract the attention of a nearby, non-corporeal entity. It will summon a demon. Read it at your own risk." I scoffed. I actually let out a short, quiet laugh in my silent apartment. Read it at your own risk. It was the most cliché, boilerplate warning imaginable. I'd seen variations of it in 100 different books. It was occult window dressing, designed to create an atmosphere of danger and mystique for the uninitiated. This book had been so practical, so direct up to this point, that the sudden dip into melodrama almost felt insulting. It was like reading a brilliant physics textbook that suddenly included a chapter on dragon slaying. I was jaded. I was tired of the failures. I was convinced that this, like all the others, would result in nothing. But the rest of the book had felt so right. So, with a feeling of weary, cynical curiosity, I decided to do it. What was the harm? I took a deep breath, focused my intent as the book instructed, and read the short passage aloud. My voice sounded thin and foolish in the quiet room. That which is without may now be within. The door that is closed is the door that is open. I see you, see me. And that was it. I waited. I listened. Nothing. Of course. The familiar, crushing weight of disappointment settled on me again. It was all just words. All of it. I sighed, rubbing my tired eyes. A whole life spent chasing ghosts, and all I had to show for it was a stolen library book and another failed experiment. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was so clear, so sudden and unexpected, that I physically jumped. It came from my front door. It wasn't a frantic banging or a weak tap. It was a firm, solid, perfectly normal knock. My mind raced. Who could possibly be at my door at nearly 2 a.m? I don't have friends who drop by. I hadn't ordered any food. Maybe a neighbor complaining about me talking to myself? I felt a surge of irritation. I got up from my chair, leaving the book open on the table, and walked to the front door. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway outside was empty, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of the flickering fluorescent light. Probably just kids, I thought, playing a prank. I unlocked the door, swung it open. The hallway was completely, utterly empty. I leaned out, looking both ways. Silence. The elevator at the far end was still. All the other apartment doors were closed. There was no one there. I shrugged, a feeling of anticlimax washing over me. I stepped back inside, closed the door, and slid the deadbolt into place with a heavy, satisfying thunk. A weird coincidence. That's all. I walked back to the table, back to the book. My eyes fell to the page I had left open, to the passage I had just read, and I saw the next line. The line I hadn't read yet. The line that was directly underneath the summoning passage. My brain registered the words before their meaning truly hit me, like seeing a flash of lightning a full second before hearing the thunder. Please, when the door knocks, do not open it. Do not open it for any reason. Do not open it under any circumstances. It must be invited. Do not invite it in. I read the words once, twice, a third time, and the blood drained from my face. My breath hitched in my chest. A cold that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room began to seep into my bones, a deep, cellular cold of absolute, irreversible horror. The knock wasn't a coincidence. The ritual had worked. I hadn't seen a demon. I hadn't heard its voice. It hadn't materialized in a puff of smoke in the center of my living room. That was the fantasy version. This was the practical version. The book was a manual, and I had followed the instructions perfectly. I had created resonance. I had attracted its attention. It had come to my door, the threshold between its world and mine. And I, like an idiot, like a fool blinded by my own arrogance and disappointment, had opened it. I had given the invitation. I am writing this now, sitting here in my chair, not daring to move. The book is still open on the table in front of me. I can't bring myself to touch it. I can't bring myself to close it. The air in my apartment has changed. The silence is no longer empty. It's thick, heavy, and watchful. It feels like the silence of a room right after someone has entered and is now standing perfectly still, just behind you, waiting for you to turn around. What do? Is there another ritual? Do I burn the book? Do I run? Can I even leave? Or is it attached to me now? Did I invite it into my home? Or did I invite it into my life? Please, if anyone out there knows anything about this kind of reciprocal magic, about what happens when you open the door, please, tell me what to do. The silence is getting heavier, and I have a terrible, unshakable feeling that it's not going to stay silent for much longer. Story 6. When I was a child, my family had a rule I never questioned. Never open the bedroom window at night. I wasn't a typical child. Despite the 1,000 questions I had growing up, I was too obedient to insist on them. While other kids had their why phases, I, though naturally curious, was content to hear because I said so. So I didn't question the rules and follow them as law. I couldn't open the window because they said so, and so I didn't. But the questions I didn't ask fought with the theories and stories I made up in my mind. When my younger brother, Luis, entered his Y phase, I found myself having to explain something I didn't even know. So I replied with the most plausible theories. To keep mosquitoes out, to stop someone from trying to break in, so no madman would be staring at us through binoculars. But Luis, since our parents weren't as strict with him as they were with me, didn't settle for mere theoretical explanations. He wanted to learn firsthand. What if the house catches fire and we need to jump out the window? He once asked our father, "Can't we open it then?" My father put a spoon down in his bowl of soup and let out a long sigh. "You must never open it. Don't worry about the house catching fire. It won't." Louise kept insisting, but my father ordered him to finish his soup and go to bed. Luis's questions deepened mine, but I didn't dare ask. If my brother got a harsh word for undesirable behavior, I'd get a slap or worse. One day, I went to a sleepover at a friend's house. I was 14 then, Luis was 10. When I returned the next morning, Luis was acting strange. He didn't initiate conversation and answered any questions with 1 or 2 words. I remember it was a Sunday, and he spent a long time lying on the laundry room floor. After a lot of insistence on my part, he finally said he was tired but didn't want to go back to our room alone. But that night, our mother forced him to sleep there. I told him he didn't need to worry because I'd be in the bed beside him. That's when he really spoke for the first time that day. "Can I tell you a secret?" he whispered. I nodded. "I opened the window yesterday," he confessed, looking down at his thighs, slouched in a way that was unusual for him. My curiosity overcame the fear and obedience I had toward our parents. I leaned in toward my brother, barely able to hide my excitement at uncovering the mystery. "What happened?" I asked, probably too loud and too fast. He took a while to answer. "Nothing really happened. I mean, it did and it didn't. Because I didn't see anything, but I felt my heart pounding hard and I got so cold I thought I was gonna die." "That sounds like anxiety," I said. "But it's not just that," he insisted. "I think there's something in here. I think I let it in." "Let who in?" "I don't know, but it's here. It's in here with us." "You don't believe in ghosts, do you?" I asked, unable to hide my skeptical disappointment. "I don't know, but they whisper when we're almost asleep. I don't know what they want, but they're speaking into my ear." I told Luis to relax, that he was just feeling guilty for disobeying our parents, and was making up nightmares in his head. He didn't believe me, but he laid down, though his eyes stayed wide open. I went to sleep, but just as I was about to drift off, I heard a whisper unintelligible. I turned, imagining I'd find Luis standing beside the bed, but I saw his shape on the other side of the room, lying down, motionless. I told myself I was just scared because of Luis's fear. I turned to the side and tried to sleep again. I woke up gasping, choking, desperate for air that was too rough to calm my lungs. I heard the voices again, tangled, incomprehensible. The hairs on my body stood on end. What if Luis was right? What if something did come in through the window? What if that's what our parents were trying to keep out? From that moment on, our childhood became increasingly strange, filled with events that always bordered on the supernatural but still left me unsure. We were constantly hearing things we were in a room, only being able to understand 1 or 2 words of whispering, never enough for anything to make sense. We'd see silhouettes, feel suddenly could in the summer, hear scratching or footsteps. All that could be attributed to our anxious imaginations. We never told our parents about opening the window. That'd only get us into further trouble. I kept telling Luis that there was nothing really hurting us, so we should suck it up and live with it. But sometimes even our parents would comment on how scared we looked, how stressed we were. Still, they'd sound more annoyed than concerned. Sometimes, when we were too scared to stay in that room, we'd sleep on the living room floor. I'd had to get up before my parents, though, as I was scared they'd be suspicious if they saw us sleeping there. We'd jump on any opportunity to not sleep on that room, and we'd often spend our vacations with our grandparents, mostly to avoid whatever was sleeping with us, but also because our grandparents' home didn't have many rules to follow, and we could act our age without getting in trouble. When Luis was 13 and I was 17, he went his first sleepover alone, and I had to sleep in that room by myself for the first time. I thought I was old enough not to give in to anxiety. I thought I had to put on brave face. So I did the opposite of what any reasonable person would do. I decided to watch a horror movie by myself in that room. At first, it was kind of working. I could blame the anxiety on the movie. I could convince myself that our room was just a regular room. No hauntings, none of that existed. It was kind of freeing in a way. Then the window slammed itself open, despite the lock being in place as always. The noise made me recoil, cover my head with my arms. But when I realized what happened, I jumped to the window to close it again. As I was trying to get my breathing steady, my mom opened the door and asked me what the hell I was doing. "I'm sorry," I said, even more nervous. I dropped my physics book, That was enough to convince her to leave. I couldn't sleep that night at all. I spent hours pacing around the room, fear and anger growing inside me. It was almost 2 a.m. when I laid down with my phone, watching several guided meditations on YouTube, none of which was working. When my eyes began to close, I heard the whispering, but this time it was clearer. Her fault. Trapped here. Let me out. Kill her. I jumped out of bed, shivering, sweating cold, and started pacing around again. I was convinced I was going to lose my mind that night. But when morning came, I left the room and forced myself to act normal as I could. I never told anyone what I thought I heard, not even Luis. Anxiety and fear followed us until we moved out. I still have questions I can't bring myself to ask. And now, Luis doesn't ask questions anymore either. In fact, we never talk about it. But sometimes I feel like I'm going to lose my mind if I don't find out what was in that room, and what came in through that window, and most importantly, why it was there in the first place. Story 7. There's an extra hand in my kids' photos. I paid to get professional photos done of my kids. They follow some weird variant of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Only one of them is ever smiling at once. I thought maybe it was time to bring a professional in and stop having to Photoshop different heads on the kids for their Christmas cards. Everything went fine. We had a nice outdoor session at the edge of the woods. My son and daughter hugged each other, smiled, posed, the works. Everything was fine until I got the photos back. As I looked at them, I noticed something. "Hey, Frank," I said, "doesn't it look like there are two hands there?" He leaned over the computer. "Well, yeah, that one's Isabella's and that one's Jack's." "No, Jack's hand is over there." I pointed. He didn't put his arm around her. He refused. "Remember?" But it was obvious. Isabella was putting her hand up to her shoulder, and there was a hand underneath her hand, even though Jack's hand was clearly hanging at his side. "I guess she made a mistake," Frank continued. "She was probably trying to Jack's hand around Isabella, but then forgot to Photoshop his own hand out." I frowned. I wish she told us before she did that. It looks kind of weird. The hand under my daughter's didn't really look like a child's hand at all. It was too big. Just where was this woman getting her stock images? I continued flipping through the album. I stopped to linger on a photo where Jack had, finally, wrapped his arms around Isabella. She wrapped her arms around him, too, and they were both looking at the camera. Perfect picture. Except there was an extra hand on top of Jack's. Just 2 fingers laying over his. I wouldn't have even noticed it if I hadn't seen the first hand. I called Frank over again. He began to laugh. "Well, I guess she's using AI." I don't think so," I said. "I mean, those are Isabella and Jack. How would AI make that?" "No. There are things with AI now where you can upload a photo and tell it to do things. Like make it a LinkedIn picture or remove the background. And it often changes things even when you tell it not to. That's a big privacy violation." I said, my heart starting to pound. I don't want their pictures in the system. I called her up. I probably should have given her the benefit of the doubt, but I was so angry by that point that I just started yelling. "You have no right to upload our photos into some AI." I told her. She sounded near the point of tears. "I didn't do it. I swear. Please don't write a review." Then she paused. "Wait, I'll prove it to you." The photographer, Janice, came over an hour later. She showed us the original files on the computer and their metadata. She showed them on her camera screen. In the originals, I saw the extra hand under Isabella's, the extra fingers over Jack's. She could be faking it, but she seemed so sincere. When Janice left, I felt even more confused. I flipped through the photos again, staring at the extra hands. They had to be AI. They had to. We finally put the kids to sleep. Frank and I relaxed in front of the TV. It's just so weird. I said, unable to let it go. I know. An hour later, I went up to check on the kids and froze. Isabella was, as usual, sprawled across her bed in a chaotic fashion, her hand hanging over the edge of the bed. Coming up from under bed, there was another hand holding hers. I screamed and flicked on the light. There was nothing there. Frank came running. I told him about it, and he burst out laughing. You're going to start having nightmares about these things. He chuckled as he got on his knees and checked under the bed, then the closet, then Jack's closet and bed. There was nothing there, of course. Nothing at all. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept checking on the kids. I kept thinking about hands. Hands attached to emaciated corpses hiding under beds. Hands attached to serial killers breaking into homes. Hands attached to nothing at all, scurrying across the carpet like spiders. I finally fell asleep, but I woke up with a start at 3 a.m. As I shook off the fog of sleep, the first thing I noticed was that Frank was holding my hand, something he never did while we slept. I turned over, back and forth, and it took me a second to realize that the hand attached to mine wasn't attached to Frank at all. I screamed, and the thing seemed to disappear in the shadows of the covers. We checked everywhere, everything. There was nothing in our room, nothing in the house. But my own hand was pulsing with pain, and 5 bright red scratches were across the palm, bleeding. I can't do this, I sobbed. I can't. My hand felt tingly and weird and numb. As we waited for police to show up, I flipped to my phone and looked at all the security cameras. No one had entered or exited. There was nothing there, except I noticed the footage at our front door from the previous day. When the 4 of us had gotten home from the park, there was a hand on my shoulder, but Frank didn't have his arm around me. Story 8. My new office job is really weird. I started a new job last week. Kind of. It's complicated. I'm a 33-year-old father, too. I was working as director of operations for a company I won't name, but it was well-known, decently sized, and I was making good money. About a month ago, I got laid off out of nowhere. Budget restructuring, they said. I was spiraling. Mortgage, kids, all that. I hadn't even told my wife. Yet, when I got a call from a private number, guy on the other end sounded mid-40s, friendly, professional, said he was sorry to hear about my situation, and then offered me a job. I never gave out my resume. No idea how he got my number or knew I'd been let go. I asked for details, and he just said, "We like how you work. We like to see it in a different environment." Vague as hell, but he gave me a meeting point, 9 a.m. sharp the next day. A payphone downtown, a few blocks from where I live. I know how this sounds. I know I should have just walked away, but I was desperate, and it was public. So I figured, worst case, I just don't get in the car. I showed up the next morning, dressed for an interview. A black SUV pulled up, clean, expensive, windows tinted like a hearse. Guy in a suit opened the door for me, without saying a word. Somehow he knew who I was. I got in. The man inside was all smiles. He greeted me like we were old colleagues, shook my hand, said, "You clean up well, Mr. Langston. Let's get started." The drive was short, maybe 10 minutes, and completely silent. We pulled into the lot of a plain, windowless building. Office park kind of place, but no signage. Inside, the air smelled faintly like chlorine. Everything was white, fluorescent lighting. Long, identical hallways. He walked me down 1 flight of stairs, then through what felt like a dozen corridors. No windows, no clocks. Finally, we stopped at a door with a badge reader. He swiped a key card, opened it, and stepped aside. "This is your station." The room looked like a break room, and an office had a baby. 1 desk, 1 computer, a filing cabinet, coffee machine, microwave. Weirdly sterile. No decorations. On the desk was a monitor already on. The screen read, "Welcome, candidate number 345. We're glad you're back." That last part stuck with me. Back? I'd never been here before. So what exactly do I do here? I asked. The man smiled politely, but before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and said, "One moment." Then he stepped out of the room and shut the door. That's when it got weirder. There was a photo on the wall. Employee of the month. It was me. Same face, same haircut, even the same suit I was wearing. Smiling like I just won the lottery. The date under was August 14th, 2024. That's next month. I thought maybe this was some onboarding prank or someone with a sense of humor, but the photo looked real, a little too real. Then I noticed a filing cabinet in the corner. I opened it. Inside were black binders labeled with simple numbers, 1, 2, 3, etc. I pulled out number 3. Inside was a CD. No label. The computer had a disk drive, so I slid it in and hit play. It was me, on the screen. Same room, same clothes, same dead eyes. I was sitting at the desk, staring at the camera. Then I started talking. Candidate number 345. If you're watching this, the test has restarted. That means you failed, or the parameters changed. My voice was flat. No emotion. I didn't even blink. Don't trust the mirrors. They're not calibrated right. And if you see your family, leave. That's not them. The screen cut to static. I sat there for a minute, just breathing. Then I noticed a small envelope had been slipped under the door. I hadn't heard anything. Inside was a post-it note. The microwave is not a microwave. I turned and looked at it. Just a regular stainless steel appliance. But when I stepped closer, I caught my reflection in the door. At first it looked normal, but then I noticed something. My reflection was clenching its jaw. I wasn't. It blinked. I didn't. I backed away and went straight for the computer. A new folder had appeared on the desktop. Personal feedback. Inside was a document labeled Performance Review. Candidate number 345. There were bullet points. Notes. Subject showed confusion during entry. Normalized within 10 minutes. Reacted emotionally to photo stimulus. Wife. Memory markers, freckles, beach, shoulder birthmark. Trigger hesitation. Mirror test. Semi-successful. I stared at the last line. Memory markers. They knew about the birthmark on my wife's shoulder. I hadn't told anyone that. It's a tiny thing, but it's one of the first things I noticed about her when we met. She hates it. Thinks it looks like a smudge. I love it, but here's the thing. The last time I saw her, really saw her, it wasn't there. Now I don't know what's happening. I don't know what this job is, or what I'm supposed to be doing. I haven't left this room. There's no clock, no phone signal. Every so often I hear footsteps outside the door, but no one comes in. And every time I check the wall, the Employee of the Month photo has changed. The smile's different. The suit is darker. And today, she's in the photo with me. My wife. She's wearing a name tag. It says Observer_. I haven't decided if I'm staying another day. I don't know what happens if I try to leave. I don't even know how long I've been here anymore. But one last thing, and this is what really pushed me to post. There's a second folder on the desktop now. It's called Candidates. It has hundreds of files, each named with a number. I opened one at random. Candidate number 344. It's a photo of a man slumped at the same desk I'm sitting at now. He's not moving. Under the image is a line of text. Incomplete termination. Emotional anchor unresolved. Anyway, sorry this is so long. I don't know if this is a black site, a psych experiment, corporate R&D, or something else entirely. But if anyone out there knows what candidate number 345 means, or has ever been in a job where nothing seems real, please message me. Because I can't stop thinking about that photo. And the fact that Rachel's freckles are gone.